Hi everybody, and welcome to Post-Apocalypse World, episode number 6. This is the post-show for, as you might expect, episode number 6 of Roll20 Presents Apocalypse World. Hello, welcome, beautiful mutants. I hope that you have had a chance to tune in as we've been traipsing around in the soggy apocalypse. If not, spoilers abound. So keep your ears ready for those. As you might already know, this is a show where we sit down together and I do all of my GM prep for the Apocalypse World campaign live and on screen. So I convert my notes, my paper notes, into fronts, maps, all the organizational tools that Apocalypse World gives me to continue moving the game forward. So what happens in the game session, I take notes during the game, and then we translate it live here. The sort of purpose of these shows is to illustrate both how to do GM prep for Apocalypse World in particular, for this show at least, and to show off some of the tools that I use in Roll20 to do some of that work. Because often I think that folks come to GMing with this idea that it's more complicated than it really is, or more difficult, or somehow is a challenge that is insurmountable, which, as we all know, is not the truth. So this one, we want to go over what happened last episode. I was gonna say, like, early on in the episode, I kind of thought that it would be like a slow burn building up to Jericho's raid, but Navarre was not having that. There was going to be none of that happening. So what we ended up with was a little bit of sort of prep work for the characters, a little bit of like weirdness at the beginning, kind of getting settled, and then around Act 3 or so, shit got real. So what I wanted to do, and what I often do, is start here with the map, because if you've been tuning in, you know that the red circles on the map represent zones of weirdness, which we started off with this idea initially that they were just kind of weird zones and nobody really knew what they were doing. And we've developed as we go. And what often happens in tabletop role-playing games where you're building the setting like this, you develop these mysteries initially, and then through play determine the answer to them. And really, that's what Apocalypse World is all about, right? If someone were to ask, how is Apocalypse World different from running or playing, more traditional or different role-playing games, it's that balance of who knows what and where that information lies. So, like in Dungeons and Dragons, let's say, for example, we've got a GM or Dungeon Master who has at their disposal a lexicon of secrets about the world, right? If I'm a GM of a Forgotten Realms game, I probably know how many hit points Elminster has, right? And I know where the King of Cormyr keeps his treasure, and I know what happened to the Netherese Empire, and now we find out that Adam is a big Forgotten Realms dork from when he was a teenager. But what I think is really cool about Apocalypse World, and I was having this conversation about Dungeon World, which is obviously derived from the same rule set, last week with some players who hadn't played before. What I really like about these systems is that you have the ability to not know those answers, not to have that data, to be like, there's some weird zones, and in some of them time goes all wobbly, and in some of them there's like ghost lights, and it's one of these things where you're playing to find out what happens. And I think that if if you can take a thing away from this show, from watching Apocalypse World, it's that the GM should have the right to be surprised by the game. And it's one of those things that, like, yeah, there's a lot of fun in revealing the secrets as a GM. You saw a little bit of that in the last episode where I said to I gave up some of that info we determined in the last post-apocalypse world about the alien replacement program or whatever, the way that the world is being terraformed for alien civilization to occupy it. I revealed that straight up to Gritch. And that is a really hard thing to get over as a GM, right? To not hoard that secret information, because you learn it from your Forgotten Realms books, and you end up thinking that that's the way that games are meant to be played. And yeah, you can play it that way. It can be fun. It can be fun to reveal that stuff. But honestly, for me, being surprised by what happens in play is part of the charm of the Apocalypse engine, and something that I've taken away to kind of include in other games that I play. Not having all the answers. So what I think, if you're a long-time viewer, if you've been watching this since early on, what I think is going to be interesting is if you tune in for Burning Wheel, which we're kind of slow starting tonight. We're lighting the match this evening. If you tune in for the Burning Wheel post show, which we'll announce when that's happening soon, I think that you're going to see an interesting change in what I talk about and how I GM, because the core principles of Apocalypse World are very different from the core principles of Burning Wheel. A GM in Apocalypse World is meant to be a fan of the characters, play to find out what happens, create threats, right? Fill the world with stuff that the PCs will end up butting their heads against, so that we can see the PCs do cool things. Now, Burning Wheel, by contrast, and I say this in this show because I want to kind of prep you for that. Burning Wheel, by contrast, is a show about challenging the character's beliefs. When a character says, "I believe this," or "I feel this to be true," or "this is true of the world from my perspective," your job as a GM is to be like, "Really? Really, is it? Because what if this?" Right? So, I don't know what Navarre believes. I don't know what Frankie does instinctively. I learned that through play. So there's a bit of a prescriptive descriptive thing going on that I think is sort of neat, and something to keep an eye out if you're going to be watching both shows, if you have the time and ability to do that. I think it'll be cool as a GM to be able to watch me apply my skills in different ways, and then tune in for both shows to give me shit for doing it wrong, because there's bleed, right? Like you're GMing a lot of games, and we're following the rules, but things bleed over. So it'll be interesting to see how, like, for me, I'm curious to see the record of how that works. So let's talk about Apocalypse World. Let's talk about last episode. So the world has changed a little. Let's get in nice and close on this one. I think this is the most significant change. So where once was a beach for Jericho, now lies a fortress for nothing. And I'll be damned if I'm not finding the whole, like, nothing puns to be... Someone on Twitter after the show yesterday posted just a quick thank you. They were like, "Great episode today. Thanks so much for the show." And then the hashtag thanks for nothing, which I thought was cute. I love... And I think maybe I've mentioned this before, but Tor, who's a friend of mine and the designer of Torchbearer, he introduced me to this idea of antagonism, where you want to create antagonists in a game who have goals that the PCs can identify with, but pursue those goals abhorrently. And as an alternative, have characters who are antagonists because they have goals the PCs find abhorrent, but they pursue them in ways that make sense. So nothing is in a bit of a middle space between Frankie, at least the initial part of the episode, between Frankie and Gritch, because Gritch wanted to get rid of nothing. Gritch is acting like they know all the big secrets, right? I'm feeding Gritch more information by way of the Maelstrom, but they don't know the realness yet. But they think they do, and they're acting like they do, and that's carrying Andrew through the game in a really interesting way. Now, Frankie, as an alternative, we know from the way that John is playing her, Frankie knows she doesn't know anything, right? Frankie is in a very bad place. And what I think is interesting is that we're seeing these comparisons between Frankie's feeling bad about killing Tao and Gritch's total willingness to just put Tao back down when she got up again. And I guess the kind of core conceit of the game is like, what does it mean to exist, right? What does it mean to live, to be real in a world where people don't remember you or don't remember things? And I think that it's coming up on time to do a little bit more kind of memory skipping with the characters. I feel like they're starting to get a little bit set in the idea that, oh yeah, we can remember these things. So I want to play around with that a bit more in future episodes. Though, we're approaching this place where we're kind of seeing towards the end. Andrew has tolled the bell for last call for Apocalypse World, because in an arc of Apocalypse World games around this time, around episodes 6 to 8, you see characters start to advance past the point of being Apocalypse World characters anymore. Gritch has taken the first open advance, and is in the position, Andrew's in the position now to start breaking the rules, right? Because one of my principles as the GM is to always look at the NPCs through crosshairs, is to say, okay, I can kill any NPC I want at any time. I can kill, cripple, maim, destroy, mutilate, fold, spindle, change. They're mine to do with what I please. But because Gritch has opened Seduce and Manipulate, Andrew can pick an NPC and on a 12 or better, snap that NPC up and put them on the shelf, right? Put them in a protected place. So I can't just be like, oh, your best bud Biz? Yeah, he falls overboard and he's dead. He drowns. That's a bad thing that I did. Too bad. If Andrew can roll a 12 or better, interacting with that character, he can snap them up out of my terrible jaws, right? But what's really interesting, and this is the part where, if you've heard me talk about Apocalypse World before, a lot of Apocalypse World games end up going in the direction where it's like, let's figure out what's wrong with the world. If you have a brainer, that's a brainer and a savvy head almost always end up in that place one way or another by accident or on purpose. And part of that is through the dramatic ability that they have to interrogate the fiction, right? And that's a phrase that you hear me say a lot in Apocalypse World. And what that means is there are mechanics in the game that allow the characters information that they might not otherwise have by way of the player. The player can ask the GM, they can ask the other players, what's really happening here? What's going on in the subtext? And sometimes that's just, what is your character thinking or feeling? And sometimes it's, what does your character care about? And sometimes it's, what the hell is wrong with the world? And that's what Gritch has the ability to do now. So the next time that Gritch opens their brain to the Maelstrom, I need to be ready to reveal what's beyond the psychic Maelstrom. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So the only thing else that I need to do on the map, besides having christened Nothing's New Fortress, is the traditional growing of the zones. So let's do it. Let's freaking expand them zones. Because without someone to fight the Maelstrom, shit's just gonna keep getting realer. Weird zones getting bigger. It's a dramatic change to the world. And then we have the mysterious circle that never wants to be selected. All right, you can stay. There's always one. So I have raised the size of the zones dramatically, and like we predicted, it only took them 5 episodes to notice, and it was Mercer's Enclave getting swallowed up. So what I want to start doing with these zones is thinking about themes for them, ways in which they are different from one another, right? Like we know that this zone, the southwestern zone, this zone fucks with time, right? So this was the zone with the frozen waves. We know that the zone closest to Mercer's Enclave was doing some stuff there. We haven't seen these other zones. I'm gonna start thinking about, I'm gonna start barfing forth some Apocalyptica in my head, working up to the next episode. But this zone, we know, because Gritch asked the Maelstrom, we know that this has something to do with Mercer having come back. And hell, maybe Mercer's Enclave is an enclave of Maelstrom clones. Maybe everyone there has already been replaced. Right? So, who knows? And what the hell is this shit about? This is going to be where it gets real messy. And these are going to intersect soon. What happens when the Fisher Clan waters get swallowed up? Like, what kind of fish do you get out of the weird zone? And sure, some of these are obvious, but what I'm really interested in is the idea of zones that do weird things without you noticing. They change you somehow by going in or out of them. I really feel like I want to sit down and watch Stalker again real soon, or like do another quick read through Roadside Picnic, because yep. Yeah, part of my inspiration for this game too is a series called the Southern Reach Trilogy, which does the weird zone thing in a really cool way. So I gotta kind of like think back over those, get some inspiration, think about fiction in which there are places in the world one does not go, forbidden zones, mutated areas. It's a staple of post-apocalyptic fiction, the rad zone, that kind of thing. Yeah, cool. So I've updated the zones, moved that stuff around. And let's jump over to my other map, which I haven't changed because we've only introduced 2 new NPCs. We don't really know them very well. But let's pop over, and I'd like to talk about ramifications. So here's my relationship map, and this represents everyone in the world that we've met so far. Right, now we're going to expand on the Fisher side of the map because Jesus is going to be introduced. Hannah and Goliath Fisher are in the area now, but this is a thing I need to do. All right, so this is what happens when you have a gunlugger in the game. Yep. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Like, Jesus Lord. Look at how many people are now non-existent smears on the horizon, right? So, like, okay, good. Biz, you got away okay. Sunshine, you're stuck with nothing. But, yeah, like, a gunlugger with not to be fucked with and bloodthirsty or blood crazed in a world where there's only like 100 people is a very dangerous person to have against you. And this is the result. This is the result of Navari trying to help. To help. This wasn't even Navari like trying to kill everyone. It goes to show the strength of the PC's ability to impact the narrative, right? To be like in a single scene, an entire culture, an entire community has been wiped out, right? We spent so long talking about like Jericho, and there was this like mutiny and like all this stuff, and I had the chance, I could have pushed harder on like let's try to save some NPCs, but that's bullshit, right? Like there's no status quo in Apocalypse World. Just because we established that Jericho's like an aging badass with some badasses on his team, the player characters have the ability to just roll into town and destroy anything in their path. Whether that means by blowing it up, with grenade launcher, or it means by undermining it with weird brain tricks. But the point here is that Jericho and his hold was important in the setting. And the tip to kind of take away from this is that in a game like Apocalypse World that's built to be easy to replace NPCs or to wipe them out, because I had to do no work mechanically to put Renfrew, Newton, Jericho, Burke, Iona, and Third together, right? They're just 4 harm boxes and some tags. It's easy to feel good about just letting them go, letting them sink into the ocean, like at the end of Titanic. But in a game like Burning Wheel, this kind of mass slaughter of NPCs would feel very different. And it's not that I would push harder to keep them alive, but they would have more tools at their disposal, right? I didn't really have any recourse. Like, when Navari rolls a 10 and gets a 7 harm or whatever, 6 harm on a messy area weapon, I have no choice. Iona, Burke, and Third, gone. Puff of smoke. And part of that is tell them the consequences and ask. And you'll notice I did that. That's a GM move. That's an MC move in the game. It's a thing that I can do. The interchange went, Avison said to me, can I hit Burke from here? That's her looking to me to find out what happens, right? I made a move. I said, yes, but if you do, you'll definitely kill Iona and Third, right? So turned that around and said, here's the consequences. Do you still want to do this? She made her move, right? She fired her grenade launcher. She seized the combat by force. And it worked, right? Now, folks were asking during the game, and I never got a chance to answer, we were using a set of custom moves, and I'll see if I can bring these up for you, for the battle countdown. Let's see if I can add this in 1 second, because I want to walk through these with you, because I think that they're interesting. Yeah, okay, here we go. So let's expand this out so we can all see it. Okay. So there we go. You should be able to see that now. So what we're looking at here, these are peripheral moves for Apocalypse World. These are things like the barter moves, which we also saw at the end of the session, and the optional battle moves. So in battle, there's a battle countdown. So I started one of these. I have it on my prep sheet here, and what we saw was a countdown from 12 to 3, 3 to 6, and 6 to 9. These are all maneuvering and incidental fire. None of that happened. The fight started right at 9 o'clock, and that gives you essentially 3 rounds, 3 ticks of concentrated fire. So even if the players had stopped, hadn't killed everybody, they had stopped fighting, but there was still fighting going on, by 12, the fight is over at 12, right? Whatever the current momentum is, that's how it goes, right? So you hit 12 o'clock, and whoever's winning wins, and whoever's losing loses. And if it's a stalemate, it stays a stalemate, but the battle is over. And during the battle, you can provide covering fire. So while Frankie and Frankie and Navari here, I'm gonna jump back to the map here. So while Frankie and Navari were doing battle, we were looking at lines of sight and fire, and they were running back and forth from Business Place to Sunshine's Place. Now, instead of just, laying down hellfire over here, Navari could very easily have covered for her friends to run to the boat instead. Stuff like that. So it gives you a little bit more of an option around what you want to do for combat. So the other thing that you can do in a battle situation is maintaining an untenable position or course. So this is when someone is shooting at you, you're pinned down, and you want to just keep fighting, right? You're like, I don't care if I'm coming under fire. I just want to hold. I want to hold right here. And it's a way to sort of slow the battle moment to moment and say, okay, during this fight, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to fight. And, you can come under incidental fire, you can come under heavy fire, or if you fail, you end up having to abandon your position. So it's basically like a risk management sort of situation for you. And then if you don't want to participate at all, like if Gritch had just wanted to stay down and not get hit, you can stay the fuck down, right? So you're saying, I don't want to fight. You roll plus sharp, 10 plus, you come under no fire. You're just safe for the rest of the fight. So this is a way where if you're a player and you're not invested in combat, you can just say, all I want to do is get somewhere safe. And then every tick, you get a chance to stay the fuck down. And maybe if you fail, in this case, you might have to run somewhere. You might have to act under fire to find better cover. Then you get another chance to stay down. And then lastly, and we saw this one twice, you follow through on someone else's move. So someone might seize control of an NPC, then you follow through on their move to inflict harm. It allows you to create a battle situation that's a little more nuanced than you normally see in Apocalypse World. And, that's nice to have. You don't always get that in Powered by the Apocalypse games, and it's an optional rule. So if you don't like it, I do. I really like the moment-to-moment battle stuff with the countdown clock, and if you don't like it, you can take them out. This is the first battle we've had in the game, right? All of the other combat has been snipers shooting at each other, ambushes, that kind of thing. So I've been waiting to use these moves pretty much the whole game. Because of two things that we built into the setting, because there are not that many people, and because Navari is such a huge badass, battles are always going to be a little one-sided. They're going to be way more threatening to Frankie and Gritch, or to other standers-by. And they're never really going to be a big threat or big deal. We're never going to have big set piece like, a large gang of 50 or 60 people. Because there's just not that many people on Earth in our window that we see it, right? So, it was nice to take those battle moves out for a spin and get to kind of see how they work. I quite like them as an option. But again, if you're not playing a game with a chopper or a gun lugger, you may never need to use them. It may just never be a thing for you in your campaign. But they're an optional way to make the game a little bit more mechanically inclined for combat. So, I've cleaned up. I've done some things to the relationship map. I do need to come back, and this is something I'll do between sessions. I need to come back and I'll probably clear out anyone that the Maelstrom doesn't plan on bringing back, which is all these jerks. And then I'll probably clear them out and we'll start filling in the fissures. We'll fill in some space here. And I need to update, where some of these lines go, right? Who matters to whom. Now, I have some questions that I want to ask of the fiction in the next time we play. So, I want to think about answering as we go. So let's take a look through our fronts like we usually do, starting with the home front. Now, on the home front, we still have Hugo, we have Monk, and we have the old crew, the Vixen. Now, they don't belong in any front yet. I don't need to move them. So why is Monk helping Tao? We still don't really know that. Who else remembers Smith's brother, Eugene? Well, now everybody does, but it's Maelstrom Eugene, so it's all distorted. So I can pull that out. Who did Frankie get the boat from? We don't know that yet. Who fights over the fishing waters? We don't know that yet. This is a question that we can answer soon, I think. I can move this one maybe because we're going to start seeing the fishers. Is Eugene really dead? Yes. We answered that one. How long ago was the apocalypse? Still don't know. Can you trust Gritch's brain scans? I think so. I think we're learning that that's a thing that we can trust. What is the Minotaur in the maze? We know this now, right? It's an alien architect. So we know that. What happened to the previous crew? We don't know. What will Navari find in her writing she'd forgotten? We haven't figured this out yet, but I think we'll learn more about that as we go. So nothing really to manage on the home front, and this is good. This is normal because the home front slowly dwindles. It's meant to, right? It's a holding pattern. It's a cage for as yet undefined creatures that we want to add to the other fronts as threats. So let's take a more specific look at some of our fronts, because they have changed pretty dramatically. So fear, I think the obvious place to start is Jericho, because guess what, Jericho? Not a front anymore. See you later. See you later, champ. Gone. Threat nullified. Right? So we've pulled out these characters completely. They're gone. They're removed from the game. Jericho and his people are dead. So Mercer's Hold. You know, I think we can move Tau, or not Tau, Hugo. And we can move, who is our other character from this front? Monk. Okay, so Hugo and Monk are now dead and replaced. Alright, so Mercer's Hold, I think we're going to go with that. I think that Mercer's Hold has been completely colonized. They are removed from play as humans and replaced with the empty Maelstrom copies. They're now servants of the Maelstrom, whether they know it or not, and they don't, right? Maybe Mercer does. Maybe Mercer, and this is a question, right? So I actually want to copy this one as a question here. I'm just going to leave it here because I have a specific question. Okay. Does Mercer know? Because that's an NPC that we haven't seen yet, right? Like, I'm starting to develop in my mind the places. There's this NPC thing that's happening where on the one hand, on one camp, we have Nothing in the Clarity Cult, who is trying to further Tau's disease, which is kind of an inoculation in some way. And we talked about how the disease has infested the engine, right, of the alien colonizing force. So the clones or whatever, the replacements, are coming back in a weird way. So that's relevant to this front, I think. I might move this whole threat somewhere else because I don't think it's about fear anymore. And I think that we need to change this, right? So outside force arrives, the outsiders take something with them. They're more aggressive now. So I'm going to change this to so the hold is replaced, which we know is done. And so counterattack. I think that the Maelstrom knows that Nothing is a bad deal, so they're going to go after Nothing. And what this does is it puts me in a position to make the PCs make a hard choice about who they're going to ally with, right? Because they don't like Nothing, but are they going to like Maelstrom Mercer any better? So I'm going to put as the next one Nothing and Mercer, they go to war. And we're going to let play decide who wins. And the PCs are going to have to impact that. So that's new and big. Tau's disease. Gritch definitely has the psychic part of it. And I think that we're going to introduce the urge to spread. So now that Gritch is in the Fisher hold, I want to see if he's going to spread Tau's disease among the Fishers. Let's populate the water or the food supply, shall we? So Exit has Tau's disease. I'm going to take Maelstrom Tau out of this. And as we saw at the end of the episode, Nothing was saying to Gritch, you belong here with us. I thought it was all lost when you killed Tau, but no, you have it now. You're the key. And I just want to see Gritch, and as we know, the like broken Maelstrom copy of Gritch. The Gritch we knew before is dead. And who knows if that character wasn't already a Maelstrom copy. I want to see them spread the infection. I want to see what happens. I want to get Gritch to transformation. So that's a thing. So the disease is continuing. I don't think anyone else has the disease, but we'll start adding characters to this list as they do. So I'm going to take that off. Frankie doesn't have it yet because we don't know the exact parameters for that. So let's take a look. The raiders, I may never use them. I'm just keeping them in my back pocket for right now. So let's look at our questions about the hold. So will the Maelstrom copy Tau? We know that they did. Does anyone know Mercer isn't Mercer? Sort of. Mercer do when Frankie finds out Frankie killed his sister? Don't know that yet. What's special about Nothing's family? They have the disease, I guess. So that's a thing. Does Maelstrom Mercer have the disease? No. Why does the disease protect you from the Maelstrom? It doesn't. So the question here is, how does the disease counteract the aims of the colonizing force? Okay. Will the disease take away Gritch's powers? Maybe. That's still very much a possibility. Will Nothing get what he wants? And he doesn't just want Maelstrom Mercer to be killed now. Can he stop the invasion? I also want to know... what does transformation look like? How does the disease affect copies of people? Where did the disease come from? You know, we want to learn details about how is disease as a weapon to defend against the colonizers? How does it work? What's the relation between the weird zones and the disease? Right? So as you go through this, how do you how are you affected by the disease when you go into the weird zone? Is it easier for you to be there? Is it harder? How is it different? These are questions we may never get the answers to, but we do know what these factions want fundamentally, right? You know, Mercer is about being the hand of the Maelstrom in the world, and I think this is going to be interesting. Mercer, and here's a question, I guess, is that what's the connection between Mercer and the Minotaur, right? And what happens? Yeah, that's right. That's right. So Sithmaster remembers when Tau went into the weird zone, she fucking lost her shit. And the Maelstrom tried to get her to kill herself, right? So how does that happen? Yeah, so that's a thing. Cool. So, what's the relation between Mercer and the Minotaur? Does Mercer know the Minotaur? Is the Minotaur like a thinking entity that can talk to Mercer? Basically, the weird zone destabilizes the construct, I think. It's a great thing to be able to explore and play. So that's a thing. Cool. Okay. So let's take a look at our next front. Let's jump over to Decay. So Nothing in the Clarity cults. This has changed a little bit. You know, we got to see our memory trick in action. Think about how different Frankie's response to Nothing would have been had she not failed that roll, right? And so now she's sick, and that 2 harm that Frankie has isn't gonna go away until she can get medicine from the cult, right? So I guess we'll see about that. You know, Nothing remembers everything. Okay, so here's a question I want to write down right before I even forget it. What did Nothing take from Frankie's memory. Because it wasn't the memory of killing Tao. He didn't do that. He took something, but we don't know what it was. Frankie didn't get to choose. So let's move our countdown clock a little. Nothing founds occultist fortress. Well, that was easy. I didn't even have to do anything. The players just handed me that one. So this is where maybe the raiders will come in. I'm gonna just be specific right now. So the next step is nothing recruits raiders. And I think that this is Nothing's ultimate plan, right? The annihilation. So Nothing wants to wipe everyone's memory clean. And I think that what he might eventually, like I think his eventual plan is that he needs to kill everyone who's been touched by the Maelstrom. I think that this is going to become about annihilation. That like everyone who who's been touched by the Maelstrom or replaced by the Maelstrom must die. They have to be purged. This is the second apocalypse, right? Caused by Nothing. He wants to destroy everything. And I guess that's where we're gonna go because fundamentally he's a decay danger. So I think that's the thing. So I'm gonna change this to and then what we're gonna do with our very last, this is a very fucking grim countdown clock. There we go. Cool. Nothing. Trying to save the world by killing everyone in it. So here's what happens if the PCs don't get involved and nothing else stops it. Like, look, Nothing can be stopped, right? He can still be stopped. It's 9 o'clock. But once Nothing starts recruiting and the players do nothing about it, the annihilation will happen. It'll start. It may change form, but it will start. It will go through. Nothing will get away with killing everyone, maybe aside from the PCs, and then kill himself. So this is a mess, and the players really need to get on this before Nothing gets out of control. They still have a chance, but they need to push, or someone does. And with Jericho out of the way, the only other people that we've seen so far that have weapons that could fight Nothing, the players can't remember them, right? Like, the Clave Dwellers have guns, they have medicine, they have a bunch of, like, other cool stuff that they've been using to try to, like, fight the forgetting sickness in their own way. But, like, no one can remember them. So that's a thing that needs to happen. So I guess, you know, that's how we're going to see those characters come back. And the implication here, and this is a good question, Tristra in chat mentions, you know, if Nothing's trying to kill everyone, why do the colonizers need a population at all? I don't know. That's a really good question. And one that I'm going to include here, right? Like, why don't the colonizers just kill everyone? Why is annihilation a solution to the Maelstrom or the colonizing force? Right? Why? Are they parasites? Do they need host bodies to begin with? Like, why do they need to, when certain people die, why do they need to be replaced, you know, by these clones or whatever? You know, I think that it's an interesting question, and it's one that I am very interested in answering as we go. Adaptation, parasitism, possession, whatever. Like, we don't know, you know, how that works. We've never, I mean, the Minotaur is the only thing we've seen, and we don't even know if the Minotaur is one of the colonizing forces, or if it's like a technology that belongs to it being interpreted through the human mind. Like, what the fuck is going on? And I want to get real metaphysical with these aliens. They're not like aliens in the sense of like, you know, they're in spaceships hovering around the Earth. They're a transdimensional Lovecraftian force. They're a force of philosophical alienness. You know, and they're not like tailoring the humans for like cultivation. They're straight up replacing them with their own copies. And why? I don't know. You know, and is killing everyone to save the Earth from being colonized, is that really saving it? I mean, dude's name is nothing, and his plan is annihilation. So who knows, right? So the forgetting sickness, I think that this is a thing that just, I mean, I'd like to kind of like, I'm going to take the countdown off this one, because I think that it's less a threat and more just a thing that's blended in to the background. And I'm going to replace it, because I think that we need an opposite force. I need a threat that represents the colonizing force. So let me just pop open my copy of Apocalypse World here, and we're gonna take a look at our options for this new threat, because this is a thing, you know, we can just add characters to the game, and we can add threats as they pop up. So let's see here. Fronts. Okay, 135. So my options for fronts are... Okay, so this is a front. It can be a warlord, a grotesque, a landscape, an affliction, or a brute. And I think I'm going to call it a landscape. So while it is an intelligent, like, kind of entity, it's really about changing the world. So it's a landscape, and we're going to call it a maze, maybe. My options are prison. Oh, prison's good, too. Prison, breeding pit, furnace, mirage, maze, or fortress. What do you think? Prison or breeding pit? Maybe breeding pit? What do we think? Breeding pit? So just to clarify, like a breeding pit, its impulse is to generate badness, and a maze is to trap and frustrate. Oh, it's a minotaur. Obviously, thank you. Yes, Variel, that makes total sense. That, yeah. Okay, so it's a maze, and we are all trapped in it with the goddamn minotaur. Obviously, genius. Okay, thank you. So its impulse is to trap, to frustrate passage. Makes sense. And the description and cast, in this case, who's working for the colonizing force? Mercer's her own front, so not Mercer yet. Maybe there is no cast yet. No, we've got a cast member. So this represents, this ticking through represents the alien invading force getting its own, getting what it wants, right? Decaying the world to a point where they can colonize. So I'm gonna put that up top. And that's what happens at midnight. Colonization. So we're gonna put, I'm gonna jump this one ahead pretty far. So we're gonna go, this is all sort of a little prehistory. So let me zoom in for you. Let me get a little closer approach, because I want you guys to be able to see what I'm doing here more clearly. Okay, so colonization at midnight. Memory problems begin to spread. First weird zones appear. Apocalypse. You can't fix this. The players cannot fix the apocalypse, right? Like, the reason for setting this in the past is that I don't want this front to be about fixing the world. It's all about making do with what you got. So we're gonna say the next stage would be like weird zone coverage complete. So in this case, when we get to the point where the weird zones are so big that it fundamentally like covers, sorry, wrong map. Fundamentally it covers everything we're looking at. You know, that's when that ticks over. I also want to include some other things that might happen after that. So once that's done, we'll say only a few humans remain. The last survivor is either dead or replaced, and then full colonization is complete. So yeah, you can see how these two. I mean, look, this is the thing. PCs, pick a side. Oh, actually, the Minotaur also has a friend. The Minotaur has the Maelstrom working for and with it. Okay, so nothing in the Clarity Cult is on one side, and their goal is to protect the world by killing all of the servants of the invading force. Now, nothing might not even know why he's doing this, right? He remembers everything. So he remembers the whole apocalypse. He remembers everything that anyone else has ever forgotten, and he can eat memories. So that's kind of a big deal. You know, he's building a cult, and if he wants to win, he's going to kill everybody, which by definition is going to make... Like, this last survivor is dead or replaced might also be he kills himself, and then all that's left will be humans who've already been replaced. I'm going to actually change this. So last human survivor. Because there's functionally two races, right? There's humans and there's copies. I don't know if nothing is instinctively aware of who's a copy and who isn't. But I don't know if he knows why. I don't think he knows there's like an alien invading force or whatever. But here are the options. If he wins, all humans will be dead. The annihilation is gone. He's killed himself. That's it, right? All the people in this area have been destroyed. Now, if the colonizing force wins, they colonize. And, you know, this is why the only thing that can save the world or change it or make a world in which anyone can live without these two things coming true is the PCs. And this is where we're going to see the seeing beyond the maelstrom, that kind of thing. Now, you know, the annihilation, the plan to annihilate everything, that's a copy annihilation. It's not, he doesn't want to annihilate humans. He just wants to get rid of everyone who's a copy. So whether there are humans left after the annihilation, real humans or not, we'll figure that out. But, I mean, like, twice is a copy, right? So nothing is in this very confused place, this very difficult place where he, you know, originally was like, if I can just make everyone forget, we can start over, maybe I can live with the copies, right? Maybe we can make the copies, maybe the ritual helps the copies forget, or it disconnects them from the colonizing force. But that didn't work. So he had to give his daughter this disease, right? He had to infect his daughter to give her the disease, to spread it out into the world. We don't know why he had to do it to Tau, but he knows that the disease is a way to fight and break down the copies. So the kind of forgetting cult thing, you know, it's really just, and you know, it's really just about the surface level stuff, right? Like, this is his old plan, and he's kind of given that up. And the Clarity Cult is about a different, higher level of clarity, right? Now it's about nothing in the... I'm actually going to change them. So it's all about nothing in the annihilation, right? And as far as, like, why he would commit suicide, he's still a person, right? He's a person remembering everything. All of these horrible things that he's done. He's the last living human in his own mind. Of course he's going to kill himself. This isn't about anything supernatural. This is just nothing wants to die. And ultimately, the goal of a position, a person in the position of like, I have to kill everyone to make the world alive and okay. Like, he's got a lot of shit on his head, and that's the only way I can see it, right? The last act of a nihilist, right, is to annihilate yourself. Heavy. So let's answer some questions. So, will a PC join the Clarity Cult? Well, probably not, but let's see if a PC will join the Annihilation, because you know who would be really good? You know, it'd be really, really good to help you annihilate everybody. Navarre. Right? Because what is Navarre good at? Annihilating. She is a force of ultimate destruction. Why does nothing want Tau? We know that. What does nothing know that nobody else does? Lots. We don't need to know about Smith July because unfortunately Smith July has been swallowed up by the maelstrom. So what does the cult know about Frankie's past? We don't know that yet. How does Tau's disease protect you from the sickness? It doesn't. So how does Tau's disease foil the copy process, right? What's the flaw it's introduced into the system? What will nothing do now that Neo's Tau is dead? No problem. How is nothing a threat to the clave? I don't think that nothing is a threat to the clave. He can remember them. They might be allies against the copies. Maybe they're a wild card because nothing will be able to remember them. What's the history between nothing and Metropolis? We don't know that yet. Nothing wants to stop the Minotaur's architecture. How? We know that with the annihilation. What did nothing take from Frankie's memory, and why is the annihilation a solution? Cool. So my other questions here are going to be, you know, what will the Force do to stop nothing? They're probably going to act through Mercer, but we'll see. And what role will the Fishers play in the war between colonizing force and nothing? Right? Because I'm very curious about that too. It's going to be about who aligns on what side and in what way. Cool. So I don't think I have too many questions about this yet. I mean, filling in these circles has really helped me. You know, we can see the game kind of rolling towards its dark future fairly quickly, and we're going to see that amp up as we go. So let's take a look at hunger, because hunger is so far something that we haven't really come into yet, right? We haven't really seen much of it. This episode and next episode will be kind of the first time that we see the Fisher clans, for example. So let's add some more Fishers. We have Jesus Fisher. We have Satan Fisher. We have Hannah Fisher, who is a mother. Basically, that's all we really know about her right now. And we have Goliath. And who is a son. So we got some Fishers. Some Fishers up in this place. We know that Satan has control of the medical supplies. So I'm going to answer a question. Why is Satan hoarding medicine? It's important. We want to add in. Well, we'll talk about more questions in a second. So this is a thing about, you know, the Fisher clans had cut Jericho off. Jericho's going to attack, but now he's dead. I think this is going to move the conclave back, right? Then the Fishers are going to make a decision about what to do with the food supply. I want the players to be at or influence this. Oh, I spelled hoard wrong. Thank you. There we go. I want the characters to influence this. So the conclave is going to be, oh, well, what do we do with the food? What do we do about nothing? What do we do about what's happening? What do we do about Mercer? Like, they're going to call a conclave and get everybody together. I'm going to decide the rest of this later. I think that the game, because remember, their impulse is to close ranks and protect their own. So the game is about finding out what happens, and I want to fill these gaps in play. So this is going to be about. The Bountiful Water will come up after they make this decision. So if they decide to close off and protect the Bountiful Water, that'll start this countdown. And then enough meat, not enough else. this I don't think I actually need as a front anymore. I think that we need just sort of one food-focused front. That's all kind of what we need to do. So let's ask some questions here. So what does the record contain that will change the way people see the world? That's a big question. Will any of the PCs become fishers? We'll see. What does the record say about them? Also more questions. These are all going to get answered in play. Anybody already a fisher? What did Jericho do? We'll never know, probably. But I'll keep it on there just in case. What's Mercer's relationship? Who will the fishers use to defend them? So we'll find that out. Why do they have the exclusive use of the water? What are you going to do? Why does Satan hoard medicine? Like, all of these are questions that are about to actually matter. They've been in the background before. So I'm going to put in here, what will the conclave decide? Okay. So, we've got our power groups forming. We've got nothing. We've got the colonizing force. We've got the fishers, we've got the raiders, we've got the clave dwellers, and they're all kind of like coming together to try to figure out, like, what are we going to do with the world at large? And so I think, let's take a quick look at Despair. Yeah, Despair is about Westridge. I don't think we need to worry too much about them. I think that's all we need to do for this session. So, you can see, again, like this, I think this is a perfect example, looking at it right here. We started the game with separated sections, right? We had all of our fronts in different places, and everything is slowly growing together in the middle. And that Gordian knot metaphor that I used in the Maelstrom vision, with the Minotaur chopping that knot open and taking out the maggots inside, that's a bit of a metaphor for the world, right? Is that the world is this like cluster of knots. Now, I was going to talk a little bit about, like, what's the real reality of the Maelstrom? What's going to happen when Gritch sees beyond the Maelstrom? I don't want to spoil that here. I've got some ideas. I want to play them out, and I also want to ask Gritch for his opinion. But what I want you to think about is the Maelstrom, in my mind, isn't it's not an entity necessarily, in the same way that I don't think the Minotaur is an entity. I think that they are branches of or feelers or whatever of some greater extra dimensional entity trying to impact our world in only the way that it knows how, right? Like, think about, like, are there other worlds or other dimensions in which this colonizing force had a more direct impact? Like, is this just the way that it has to handle Earth's ontology, right? And if so, what makes Earth metaphysically different than any other place, right? I think that the whole apocalypse and everything about it is caused by these aliens trying to take the Earth away from us. What do we have that they want? What is different about our space, our philosophical space, and why is the Maelstrom a thing that exists because of that, right? So, I kind of like, I love the way that this game is going. I love that even if the players are only seeing the cream on the surface, we get to understand the whole space in this little session here together. So as always, thank you so much for coming. I love these little like sit downs, and I'm gonna keep doing them as long as we're playing Apocalypse World. Burning Wheel is gonna get their own. I think we're gonna call it something cheesy like As the Wheel Turns. We'll announce that before the first episode. Speaking of which, Burning Wheel pre-show tonight, 5 p.m. if you're watching this live on Twitch, on our YouTube channel. If you're not watching it live on Twitch, you'll see it there. It's going to be at 5 o'clock Pacific, so whatever that is, time for you. And this episode, I'm just going to be talking about the Burning Wheel character sheet and Burning Wheel as it interacts with Roll20. So make sure to pop by for that if you're interested in running your own Burning Wheel game, or you just want to see some of the cool stuff that we've built to make running Burning Wheel easier. Because for players, it can be very mathematical. So yeah, so tonight, as the wheel turns, we're gonna get in and take a look at those character sheets, and I'll be doing a Q&A, obviously, because I don't know that a character sheet's gonna take us a full hour, but hey, it's Burning Wheel, it might. So definitely tune in for that. we will see you then, and if not, another episode of Roll20 Presents Apocalypse World next Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good one.